Seeing it's 6 p.m., I'd like to call the August 21st, 2019 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order. And would you all please rise and join, if you're able, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Welcome, everybody. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel.
Here.
Councilmember Peterkin is absent. Councilmember Petty.
Here.
Vice Mayor Navarre will be here shortly. Councilmember Malloy.
Here.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Here.
Councilmember Naxtet.
Here.
Student Representative Summers is absent. Mayor Gabriel, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council, before we get to agenda approval, I'd like to draw your attention to a laydown you should have in front of you with requested revisions to the agenda packet. Action, add item D1, ordinance number 3072-2019, amendment memo, an additional amendment memo, forms requested by the city attorney and city managers, or city attorney and city manager. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to approve the agenda with the requested revisions to the agenda and packet listed by the mayor and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Unanimous consent is requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. That brings us to the consent agenda. Councilmember Naxton.
Move for approval of the consent agenda. Request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to any item that is on the consent agenda, which is denoted with an asterisk next to it? Seeing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection from council? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. That brings us to item B, scheduled public comment. We have Tim Dillon, Executive Director, Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District. Overview of Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District website and resources. Welcome, Mr. Dillon.
if you need, if you've got questions, be more than happy to answer them. If at some point you're looking at something and you're like, Tim, what does this mean, or how do you do this, or a suggestion of something else that we should have on our website that we don't have, let me know. Because this is a website for each and every one of our communities, incorporated and unincorporated. And again, this is something that we do under our overall umbrella. So, any questions?
You answered one of the questions I had was who built it. So you kind of answered that at the end, but very impressive. You guys have been busy.
I can tell you, not including Caitlin and my time, as far as just straight cash outlay, it was under $20,000.
Mm.
And to get a website with, we actually, Sean Butler is on our board, and she actually teaches computer science and stuff up from University and computer technology. And she was really, really impressed, especially with the amount of data.
Mm.
And, you know, we've got a couple little mistakes and a couple little pieces that we need to fix and all, and if somebody finds something, you know, if you've got a phone number reversed or whatever, let us know, and we can do all the upgrades now at our shop.
Does anybody have any questions? Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Just want to say, wow, you know, that's a really impressive website. And so much business is done on the internet now and generated through that in websites that it's fantastic that you put that together and with all the links to all the communities and industries. I'm really impressed. Thank you for doing that and presenting it.
You're welcome. And again, we want, you know, every time I have discussions with Paul, or whether it's with the borough mayor or any of our other city officials around the borough, you know, we're fortunate that we still have people coming to Kenai Peninsula Borough. You know, we're not seeing, we're seeing some people leave, but our net numbers are still positive. And part of what we want to do is we want to make sure that when people come and visit, that we're able to keep them to stay, whether it's a full-blown business or it's a family that wants to be able to, you know, have quality of living. You know, there's a page in here just on the education that, you know, when that whether it be the school district, AdTech, or the college, you've got it all right there. And all of these go directly to their websites. Plus, some information, some of it, you know, we'd like it to be a little higher, but, you know, realistically, sitting there at 4-year adjusted graduation rates of 84%, you know what? It's better than the 81 at Anchorage or the 77 down in Fairbanks. And those are the kinds of things we need to continue to highlight.
Any other questions? Councilmember Naxton.
Tim, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate your attention to detail, right down to the sweatshirt you're wearing tonight, Kenai Cardinal. You know, but that, okay, I couldn't see that side, so don't bring that up. No, really, this is great. I'm gonna personally spend some time on this website and go through it. And it has a lot of bells and whistles that I appreciate, all the little graphs and all of that, and I can't wait to page through them.
Just remember one thing.
Yes, sir.
It's not a fluff piece, so there may be some things in there that you don't like. I'm just saying.
Data's data. I like.
You know, but again, you know, it's accurate, and that's what we have to be. We're not going to spin it. We've got to lay it out there for people. So there may be one or two things that you don't like.
Any other comments, questions?
No,
Councilmember Glendale.
yeah. I mean, even I got it, so that's great. I'm the one with crayon and paper, okay? Yeah, no, this will work for me.
Councilmember Petty.
This is a very powerful tool, and thank you for bringing it to our attention so that we have it as a resource to guide others who come to us, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And again, thank you, Jamie, for helping me bring it up the way it's going to be.
Thanks, Tim.
Call me if you have questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'll have a great evening.
You too. Under unscheduled comments, we have none. We are now on item D, public hearings. First up, ordinance number 3072-2019, renaming, repealing, and reenacting Kenai Municipal Code Title 22, General Fund Lands, reclaiming Title 21, renaming Title 21, City Airport and Airport Lands, and repealing Kenai Municipal Code Chapter 21.15, lease and sale of airport lands outside of the airport reserve to encourage responsible growth and development to support a thriving business, residential, recreational, and cultural community through responsible land policies and practices. This is brought forward by administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to enact ordinance number 3072-2019.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3072-2019? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I think this is a really good work product that deserves some additional thought and consideration too. It's a rewrite of, and a repeal and reenactment of two chapters and combining into one for disposition of city-owned lands. And we did have a work session on it earlier, but that was primarily a presentation by administration. I'm thinking that aside from the housekeeping sort of amendments to plug in the dates and recommendations of the various commissions we sent this to, my interest would be in having council set a work session for council where we could, get into the meat of it and, discuss any questions that we have and, ideas for other amendments, et cetera. My intent would be after discussion to move to postpone the ordinance to set a work session and then have it come back to council after the work session for a second public hearing where, we'd all have, if we have amendments to offer aside from what's here tonight. In addition, there's a laydown from the city attorney with some other proposed amendments relating to subdivision, which we really haven't had time to analyze. I don't want to take away from anyone else discussing the merits of the ordinance, but I would like to see us have a work session. I'd also like to say that I did talk with Councilmember Peterkin about this, who's not available to be at the meeting tonight because at our last council meeting he had said that he couldn't be here and he had some interest in discussing it. And he told me that he had some ideas for development incentives that are maybe in addition to what's in the proposal for development incentives, and he wanted the opportunity to discuss that with everybody. So that's all that I have to say at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Malloy. Just for more additional information before consideration postponement, should probably ask administration if there's a timeline you're on to have this before council to vote on, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. No, it's not time sensitive. We spent actually a little over 10 months on this already, and it's important enough that I think that if there are questions or potential amendments that council would like to see, that I would welcome a work session. And if this gets in place sometime over the next several months, that works fine for administration.
Thank you. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with Councilor Malloy. It's a lot of effort and good thought has gone into this, and it's just variations on a theme to maybe just fine tune a little bit. I received some comments through the committee, through the community rather, and while they agree that a policy is needed, just a fulsome explanation could be revealed, and I think a work session would honor that request. So I'm very, very appreciative and approve of the effort that's gone in, and it's well written. I like the sectional analysis that our attorney Scott Bloom did, And I think we just have an excellent, excellent place to begin a work session. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Navarro?
Yes, I don't necessarily have a problem with the work session, but as you know, now that it's before us, you can't make any changes. You have to come back and make those changements. You're in work sessions, you're not supposed to essentially work it. That's why if people have amendments, I don't mind postponing it, working it on here. If a work session would flush out some things so that amendments could be clarified, it doesn't mean they're supported or not when it comes back before us, but now that we have the ordinance, sometimes what happens, and you could do it, but it's kind of a misdirected way. You have a work session and you create a substitute and you put that out there. Essentially, you're agreeing to all the substitutes and you say you haven't taken a vote in session. So that's where I have a little concern. I don't mind postponing it, you know, working on it, having people discuss their concerns and their amendments, and then sometimes voting on them or wait until the next meeting to flush out those amendments for people to be able to vote on. But I'll work through this because it's that important, and I do appreciate what the administration's done. You know, I don't have as big a problem with the substitute, but there isn't a lot of the public here tonight, and I don't think there'll be a lot at our work session, so it's for us to do. And if we come up with a substitute, I guess so be it. I would have liked to have seen, when the work product got done, had a work session, explained it, made some adjustments, then when the ordinance in front of us, then you know, amend or you don't. But I'll flush it out as it is this time. Thank you.
Councilman Glendenning?
Yeah, it was not the intent of Councilor Malloy's suggestion to have a second public hearing where all of this could be revealed?
I believe so, yeah.
No, thank you.
And I think that would be probably the, you know, administration has several proposed amendments in here that they would, after the work session, try to incorporate those into, bring forth a substitute that we could just work as a template, I mean, to start moving forward, so. Councilman next then.
I just want to say that I think this is really a good work product, and I've you know, gone through it very carefully. Of course, you always miss a few things, and there probably are, like is suggested, nothing is ever perfect. But I think that we'll find that the work session will probably go very well. There's not going to be a whole lot of outstanding, you know, questions and all of that, I think. And actually, the amendments that I see that are proposed here by the administration are just kind of clean up stuff like that. It's not too big of a deal. I'll be done in a moment. And just a couple of things that I have general questions on. I'm just going to kind of bring them up, and they're kind of minor. I just mentioned it to Paul, and it's not an amendment at all. It has to do with whenever I see a list of things, site preparation. It's in the definitions. There's a list of things. Site preparation work means this. Well, you know, that's all inclusive, and maybe there's something else that ought to be in there. And I'm just suggesting that maybe that language is fine the way it is, or perhaps it may be appropriate to have something like includes but is not limited to, or something else perhaps, or maybe it's just right. It just might be something we could have in our discussion at the work session, and that kind of language reappears again farther down in development incentives. The credits might be made available, value for preparation work, the lease premise including clearing, grubbing, classification, unclassified excavation, classified fill, backfill, crushed aggregate base. It doesn't give any credit for asphalt or anything else like that. Perhaps that is included as a building, something permanent. That and sidewalks, I don't know. But I think that asphalt's going to actually stay there if the building leaves. But it's just kind of a question. Or what if during development of the site, something is found like a manhole structure or something that has to be excavated out and pulled out and backfilled? Would that not be part of the development incentives, a cost that's not included in the all-inclusive list? So I feel like I'm going on a little too far on that, but it's just something in the back of my mind is, well, what if, and perhaps when we have our work session, if we have a list, but the administration can also determine if something unexpected happens, that there's maybe some wording that we could have that's perhaps already in there, that this will be covered. Thanks.
Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, and thank you, Councilmember Nexted. And I also have questions, so, you know, that for discussion, similar to what you just did. Like, an example is, you know, sometimes they use the standard in the best interests of the city. Sometimes it's advantageous, you know, and there's other standards, and I kind of think there should be one, you know, and so it's things like that, and, you know, why would that be or whatever. So, I mean, I would be prepared like anybody else, you know, with what my questions are for the work session to have a discussion, and then it could be, you know, like whether amendments are needed or not, it could be sort of crystallized in your mind, as well as addressing the one that's in the laydown. And so it wouldn't be, so, you know, and I also, because Councilmember Peterkin isn't here, I think that you know, the city clerk, without violating Open Meetings Act, because it has to do with scheduling, you know, rather than have us try to schedule it now, we could let her know what dates were available and not available in September, and the city clerk could pull that together, you know, outside of meetings for us, if that works for everybody else. You know, as far as scheduling the work session would be concerned, and you know, it might be, I don't see it taking more than 2 hours, you know, but I would like it to be on a date other than the council meeting, if we can do that, because it would be, you know, maybe it could be done in 1 hour, but it might take up to 2, is all I'm thinking.
I got a question for Ms. Hines. Oh, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all. When we're done discussion, I would make a motion.
Yeah, okay. I guess my question for Ms. Hines, is this something we would have to enact by our second meeting or vote by because the election's October 1st, I believe, this year, so.
Yes.
So we would have to have it on our agenda to enact on so that would be presumably the second public meeting, so, and the second public hearing, so we'd have to have it before that. Okay. I just wanted to thank administration for bringing this forward. I certainly appreciated the effort that was put into clarifying in several different ways and manners, you know, the changes incorporate or to you know, capture the changes that were made and put them more easily to my, it was, and I haven't gone, I mean, I need to digest this a little bit more myself. It is pretty overreaching, but you know, it was nice to have those, you know, several different ways to look at it, you know, sort of hold it up and turn it and that sort of thing. So there's other things that I notice on our laydown. We have a sample form here that under property information, I think there's some questions that just have a yes box that may require a no box or something, so that there's an affirmative answer to the question. You know, that's just my thought, but just things like that I think a work session would probably flesh out a little bit more too. So I would be in concurrence. Councilmember, Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I probably should speak to those forms there. There was a request at the last council meeting that I wasn't at, I think from Councilmember Glendenning, to include those forms. The ones that are there are still in draft form. They don't say draft on them, but they're not finalized yet, but they're a work in progress. They're really close to being finalized, and those are really just for informational purposes. I know there was some interest in looking at those. And also, you know, just as far as the entire process of this, I think, you know, when council directed administration to look at this and look at our land sale and leasing policies and code, we recognized that this was of very much an important issue for the city, and we took it very seriously, which is why it's taken so long to get to where we're at. And it's also why we had the work session in July where we provided the legislation and the presentation, and we've taken it to planning and zoning and harbor and airport. You know, we've really tried to spend a lot of time on it, and in recognition that it is going to take some time. And I also think that as many work sessions as it takes, this is important, and it should be given this type of attention. So I actually appreciate the fact that council's looking at it. I think the more eyes that look at it, the better off we're going to be. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ostrander. Councilmember Glendenny.
I'll be brief. Process, definition, and consistency. Those are the asks, the observations, and requests that I'm hearing so far. It's not a tidal wave of folks, but it's enough that it has my attention, and we're off to a good start with this. So anyway, thank you.
Yep, agreed. So, I guess I'll defer to Councilmember Malloy, but I'd like to, again, thank administration for the work they put into this, to this point. Councilmember Malloy.
So I would move to postpone ordinance number 3072-2019 to a council meeting that is no later than the first meeting in October for a second public hearing, and for there to be a work session of council set at a date to be determined before then, with the city clerk to communicate with the council members regarding availability dates, to find a date where, that's mutually for council to have the work session.
Point of order.
Vice Mayor Navarro.
Is that a legal motion to honor before the end of October? I don't know what the procedure would be to do it before that. I think you have to be at time Pacific, or technically you're killing it if you're not making it a time sensitive, even though you say it's before October. But I'll
No, it
defer
was-
to the clerk or to the legal, but that's not a very clear motion if it says honor before. So I don't know how we get it before us unless we take official action and set it. But I'll leave that answer. That's my point of order.
Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. It was specific. It was that the second public hearing is to be held no later than the first meeting in October.
Can I speak to it?
Yeah.
So-
Councilmember Malloy.
So the intent there is that it would not fall off, because it has to be done by the conclusion of the second meeting in October. So the intent is that it doesn't fall off. And by saying no later than the first meeting, it could be the second meeting in September if we're done with our work session. You know, it could come back earlier if we're done with our work session earlier, but I don't know what everybody's schedule is. So that's what I was hoping to accomplish.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was reading into, that you said it could be either the first meeting in September or the second meeting in September,
Right.
presumably.
No later than the first meeting in October.
Right. Councilmember Naxton.
I guess we don't have a second, but we can debate it. But I wanted to make sure before we did, that, what my thought was is that, no later than that date, but the intent would be the meeting after our work session. Whenever that is, it would be the intent, and I'm not sure if that was clear in your motion, or if it was up to Jamie to just decide.
No,
Would you, you'd like to make another?
my intent was that, it's on our agenda after the work session that we have, but it's got to be no later than, on our agenda, no later than the first meeting in October.
Second?
This, Vice Mayor Navarro.
Sure. I hate to make this point, but it's my understanding things don't drop off the calendar anymore like we were told they did, or do they? If we didn't, I just don't like fall off the calendar like it's gonna fall off. I wanna clear that up. That's one point.
Yes, or Vice Mayor Navarre, according to Robert's rules, at the second meeting of October, if final action has not been taken, it would fall off the agenda. In situations where we have an ordinance that's on the agenda to be introduced, and then they come back for final action hasn't been taken, so it doesn't fall off the agenda. In this situation, it would be under unfinished business, and if it was not acted on finally, it would fall off the agenda.
All right, I'll deal with it another time, because I thought we had taken care of that. Otherwise, we can do a separate amendment to defer from Roberts in that, because I don't, when you table something, this isn't tabled, it's an active legislation, and I still argue that that would not die and go away and have to be reintroduced at the end of October, but I won't argue that today. The second question would be, as the motion's written, who has the authority to bring it back before us before the second meeting in October? Is it an official action of this body at a meeting that we can bring it up immediately at that meeting and bring it back, or would we need to give notice that we're bringing it back early? Therefore, it's because Councilman Naxted we want to bring it back after the work session. Well, if in fact it has to be by action of this body, then it would take the next meeting and supposedly not necessarily have to be noticed that it's up, that we say, if, let's say it's today right now and we've had the work session earlier today or yesterday. We didn't have time to put it in the agenda, but we could say, one of us could move to bring it back to us at the next meeting or the first meeting in September. Is that the action that's required, or could the mayor just add it? Could whatever? A motion like this, I just haven't heard much in my lifetime on the bodies that honor before.
Ms. Hines?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. It was my understanding that the clerk was directed to bring it back to the soonest available meeting after the work session so that it could be publicly noticed. Decisions cannot be made in a work session, so you would not be able to direct me at that point to bring it back, but it was my understanding the direction is that I am directed, based on this motion, to bring it back as soon as it can be publicly noticed after the work session, no later than the first meeting in October.
That's the way, I think that's the way, just simply because we don't know when we can have the work session scheduled, that's sort of the variable here, so without that information, we're sort of given the latitude to allow for some movement there, from the first, second, or third, second meeting in September or the first meeting in October. And that's, I believe, Mr. Malloy's intent with the motion.
Yes.
Okay.
The clerk has interpreted it correctly.
Okay. Any other discussion on the postponement and work session, which is included in the motion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Navarre?
Yes.
Councilmember Malloy?
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtet?
Yes?
Motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're now on item D2, ordinance number 3073-2019, accepting and appropriating a grant from the state of Alaska for the purpose of purchasing books. This one is sponsored by administration. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxted.
I move to enact ordinance 3073, 2019.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3073-2019? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Discussion, deliberation of council. Councilmember Naxted.
Just like to thank our library director for bringing in $7,000 for additional books for our library.
Hear, hear. Any other comments? Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, just reading the letter from the state of Alaska, and there are, some stipulations, and they're easily met and actually are quite useful as suggestions or mandates for spending the money. So again, thanks to our librarian for securing this for us.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Navarre,
Yes.
Councilmember Malloy,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtat,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
motion passes.
We're on item D3, council ordinance number 3074-2019, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $1,504.82 in the FY 2019 General Fund Police Department for state traffic grant overtime expenditures, sponsored by administration. Pleasure, Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Move to enact ordinance number 3074-2019.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance 3074-2019? Seeing no, bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, these are pass-through funds, correct?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendenning. By pass-through, what are you referring to?
Well, they are, excuse me. Talks here about reimbursement of the $1,500 and change. That's my idea of a pass-through. In other words, the money comes because of its dollar amount, we have to appropriate it. We're on a radio show, that's why I'm doing this. Thank you.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Glendenning, thank you for the clarification. Yeah, this is a reimbursable for actual costs that we incurred for overtime patrols during the Memorial Day period. So these are reimbursed from the state to the city.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Naxtat.
Yeah, I'd just like to to thank the police chief or whoever requested the grant from the state of Alaska for $1,504.82.
Very good. Any other comments, deliberation? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Yes.
Councilmember Malloy,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtat,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you. Council, we're now on ordinance number 3077-2019. Increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the water and sewer special revenue and water and sewer improvements capital project funds for engineering design services to relocate well house number 1, which was damaged by the November 13th, 2018 magnitude 7.0 South Central Alaska earthquake, sponsored by administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxton.
I move to enact ordinance 3077, 2019.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3077-2019? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, deliberation from council. Councilmember Glendenning.
Yeah, not all of the costs of this project are reimbursable by the insurance, is that correct?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendenning. That's true. The API is going to be covering the portions of the project that are coverable under our insurance, and the city will be responsible for the remainder.
Okay. And I also understand that a lot of the remainder can be done in-house with our own resources. Is that correct?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendenning. There may be some in-kind services that we provide. You know, there's going to be incremental costs, and actually this appropriation here only covers the design of the project. Once we get the design completed, we'll have an engineer's estimate and have a better idea of what those incremental costs are. And if there's opportunities to provide some in-kind services during the construction, that's something that we'll consider.
Thank you.
Councilmember Naxton.
For Mr. Ostrander, I just want to understand the project. We're going to take the well house, well 1, that we don't need anymore, move it over by well number 2. And are we going to drill another well over there, or what are we going to use the building for? Or is it going to be attached? What's the?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Naxted. So well one is we are going to remove the well house from well one. Well one is no longer a viable well, so we will actually end up abandoning that well. It's not contributing to our water system currently. So it's going to be moved over to the well number 2 site. There's not going to be an additional well drilled. The building itself will be used to support the water plant at the facility. The water folks have had a need for another building over there for storage of equipment for some time, and this is going to fulfill that need.
Bless you, Councilmember Petty. Any other questions, council? Deliberation? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Malloy,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtet,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterkin. Just kidding. Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Navarre.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're on item D5, ordinance number 3078-2019, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport special revenue and airport improvement capital project funds to provide supplemental funding for the 2019 airfield marking, crack sealing, seal coating, and minor pavement repair project, sponsored by administration. I will note that there's sort of a roadmap here for a motion to introduction, a motion for a second reading, which will require unanimous vote, and a motion for adoption requires 5 affirmative votes. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Malloy.
Move to introduce ordinance number 3078-2019.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3078-2019? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council.
Request unanimous consent?
Objection?
Councilmember Glendenning.
Just a question, point of information. Some of the enhanced damage was as a result of the earthquake, is that correct?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Glendenning.
A point of order, I I don't think you can amend or do anything on,
Yeah, I think, hang on.
on
I
introduction,
think
but
we're on introduction, so we have to have, approve that, and then we have to have a motion for a second reading and then another public
Correct.
hearing, so we need to vote on the, motion, and there was a request for unanimous consent. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the, ordinance is introduced. I'll entertain a motion for a second reading. Councilmember Malloy?
I moved for there to be a second reading on ordinance number 3078-2019 due to the emergency circumstances, of the need for the ordinance action.
second.
Is there any discussion on the, motion for a second reading? Councilmember, Glendenning?
Yeah, some of this damage,
We're still not there yet. We have to
don't
approve.
call on me.
Huh? Yeah. So we have to have a vote on this. We need a unanimous vote for the second reading. Any discussion on the motion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Naxtet,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Navarre,
Yes.
Councilmember Malloy,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Council, we now have before us ordinance number 3078-2019, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport special revenue and airport improvement capital project funds to provide supplemental funding for the 2019 airfield marking, crack sealing, seal coating, and minor pavement repair project. Pleasure, council. We'll move to adopt at this time, or enact rather. Vice Mayor Navarre.
Thank you. I move for the enactment of ordinance number 3078-2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3078-2019? Seeing none, we can now move to Councilmember Glendenning.
Thank you. Some of this damage was a result of the earthquake that we suffered in November.
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendenning. It's possible that some of it was due to that. It's very difficult to determine that with absolute certainty. It could be that the earthquake did exacerbate the issue. It could also be just the result of an additional year of wear and tear, that the cracks enlarged over the course of the last year. So I can't say with certainty that the earthquake caused this issue, but it's a possible culprit.
And based on your comments, it's probably doubtful then that we would have been eligible for public funds that were made available to reimburse entities such as us for earthquake damage. Is that a correct assumption on my part?
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendenning. I think because of the difficulty in determining with absolute certainty that that was the cause, I think it would be difficult. Yeah, I think it would be difficult.
Thank you. Of course, we'll repair the runway.
Any other discussion on ordinance? Councilmember Nagsted?
Yeah, well, I just want to, whatever the cost, the cracks are there, they need to be filled, the asphalt needs to be protected. You know, Mr. Glendanning's question is aside, but the asphalt absolutely needs to be taken care of, and it needed to be taken care of at the time when it was being dealt with. And I want to thank Mr. Eubank, who is the acting city manager at the time, for taking action and pursuing, you know, having the contractor go ahead and do the work, because that was, in my thinking, it was absolutely the right thing to do. And otherwise, we'd be coming back and we'd be spending a whole lot more to have somebody remobilize out there to do it. So the work is probably not complete yet. I think there's some painting to do out there, but nonetheless, I'm pleased that the city acted appropriately and moved forward, and it's being done.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the ordinance? Mr. Ostrander, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just wanted to mention one thing also. Because of the actions of Mr. Eubank and Scott Curtin and Mary Bondurant, actually the portion of this in change order that is for the work that was required after the FAA's safety inspection, which is approximately $35,000 worth of work here, that actually is going to be eligible for FAA grant funding, which typically that would be something that would be the responsibility of the city. So through their actions, the city actually was able to get this done through an FAA grant. So that certainly saved the city some money.
Any other? Thank you, Mr. Ostrander, for pointing that out, recognizing people responsible for bringing this forward to our attention. Any other discussion on the ordinance? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Navarre?
Yes.
Councilmember Malloy?
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning?
Yes.
Councilmember Nagstat?
Yes?
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're on item D6, resolution number 2019-56, stating its conditional protest regarding the issuance of a new distillery liquor license number 5826 for Highmark Distillery Incorporated, doing business as Highmark Distillery Incorporated, located at 2270 Royal Street, warehouse number 1, Kenai, Alaska 99611, and authorizing the city clerk to notify the Alaska Alcohol and Marijuana Control Board if conditions are met. And this is brought forward by the city clerk. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Glendenning.
Move to approve resolution 201956.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2019-56? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council? Vice Mayor Navarre.
I'm a little, I thought normally we withhold our objection if taxes haven't been paid in the other. I didn't know we withheld it. They just don't, they get, the liquor board sometimes only meets so often. And if we need more time in working out a conditional use permit, it doesn't allow them to open. But we don't put out we don't stop their license from being approved, because that doesn't make them be able to open it in our city with those conditions. if I had a liquor license currently and I was doing a remodel and an upgrade, the building department, yet I'd still have my liquor license approved, and it might take me before I get open to get the CO. But I'm just wondering from the administration or whatever, why it appears from the taxes and the finance, we've got that answer. I'm just wondering why we're holding it up based on the other. I don't have a problem, letting him get his liquor license, or whoever, he or she, I don't know the specifics in this one. But if you understand my point, I don't think we should hold up the liquor board ruling approval, and that we just deal with the building issue, and whenever it gets resolved, it might take longer, but then it doesn't have to go back before the liquor board, which might take 90 days to meet again. But I could be wrong on this. I just didn't know we held up on building permits and zoning issues, and maybe even a land use issue that has to be resolved.
You want to make a run at that, Ms. Hines?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Kenai Municipal Code 2.40.010 states that holders of applicants for licenses issued by the AMCO office shall have all obligations to the city of Kenai on a satisfactory basis prior to city council approval. And the conditional use permit and the building permit are considered obligations to the city. And this is a conditional protest. So as soon as these are obtained, then we would lift that protest. It does not stop the AMCO or the Alcohol Control Board from acting on it. Their action would potentially look like approving it and deferring to the director that once all approvals have been received, then they would issue the license. So it really just buys them the time to get everything in order before the liquor license is issued.
Did that answer your question, Vice Mayor Navarro?
I sort of heard it. I'm still surprised that building permits, like I said, if I had my current liquor license and I was remodeling or rebuilding, I wouldn't have a conditional use permit at that. I just don't want it to be a stumbling block or a delay, or that it has to go back to AMCO. If you're saying our conditional protest, we're not gonna protest it, we're just putting that, we want the ability for AMCO to say, okay, after they meet our building and conditional use permits, and then essentially we give the final say, not AMCO. I mean, AMCO's approving it. Again, this goes back to my belief that the city's open for business, and if we don't have to do this, because it's my understanding, and legal could correct me, if the city doesn't give them a CO or give them a conditional use, it doesn't matter if they have a okay from the ABC board to open, they don't get to open. And I guess I would need to read that and understand it and make sure that the applicant now doesn't have to wait for another meeting or potentially wait for another meeting from AMCO before they can take action, when in fact our city code requires them before they can open to have the conditional use permit and or the CO. And so then we put it in our hands totally. They've got their thing, but they complete because it might take longer than as it's stated in the wording here, and I'd have to go back to my memory. But the reason it's before us today is because our last day of protest is the 24th. I haven't heard anything here that it's going to be resolved, and I'm concerned with them having to wait and what our conditional protest means. So, that's my issue, and if it comes up and the AMCO votes against it, now they have to wait 90 days to go back, I'm not going to be, and they resolve it in 30 days, I'm not going to be a happy person.
Mr. Bloom, would you like to?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'm not as familiar with AMCO's processes, Jamie, as I know she's worked a lot with them. But I do think that pursuant to our code, and it's our typical practice, that we won't approve a license until they have, the conditional use permit that's needed from the city. That's why we always tell applicants, and especially with the marijuana licensing, we've told them to come to the city first, take care of your city business, and then go to AMCO, especially because of the license application fees with the state that we don't have. But it sounds to me like Ms. Hines is suggesting that AMCO would issue a conditional license to them, and what you're doing is approving her to contact AMCO as soon as the distillery's met its obligations with the city to let them know that it's been met. And at that point, I think the license would be able to be issued.
Vice Mayor Navarro.
Is, could the word protest be changed to approval? In other words, can you have a conditional approval?
Well, I don't know if we're the ones actually approving the license. It's our opportunity to protest, but I'll defer to Ms. Hines on that.
Conditional non-objection? I'm just,
Right, it's a conditional protest, and it really just buys the applicant some time to get the conditional use permit and the other in order, the building permit. I didn't double check with AMCO. It's been my experience that they don't wait for the cities to meet. They defer the authority to the director to issue the license as soon as all of the approvals have come in. This conditional protest allows the director to hold that license until that conditional use permit and the building permit are in place. And once those two items are in place, I then issue a letter to lift the protest, and they're issued the license. It is a new license. It's not a renewal.
Right.
and sorry to, am I, through legal, am I correct in saying that, let's say they had the license, let's say we didn't hit the 60 days in AMCO, they wouldn't be able to open, is that correct, till they meet our legal requirements of city code, is that correct?
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Vice Mayor Navarre. So do I understand you correctly that you're saying if they had an existing license and it was due for a renewal?
No, I'm just saying, let's just use this one. Let's say we didn't make the 60-day objection. We're going to be there by 3 days. Let's just say that we didn't protest, so AMCO issued them a license.
So then we would have two options. We would either try and enforce the building permit on our requirements on our own, or we could notify AMCO that they're not in compliance and ask AMCO to revoke their liquor license.
If they opened, but what I'm saying is just because they have a license from AMCO doesn't mean they have a legal building for the public to enter and to go, and our code covers that, and we have to deal with that a lot of times. When buildings are under construction, they don't get to just move into it, and they don't need it has nothing to do with the liquor license.
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you. You're correct that if they had an ongoing business and they were making some structural changes that required a business license, we would deal with the business license, or I'm sorry, with the building permit without involving AMCO, as long as they were in compliance with our process.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Naxton.
I think I'm satisfied with the clerk and the attorney's explanation of how we'll be working with, or they will be working with AMCO. These two items can't be ignored. I mean, the conditional use permit is a bit of a process. The last item, however, the building it's a change of use. It's a life, health, safety thing. It's a big deal, potentially. We can't just, you know, and this is a business in the city of Kenai. They've, you know, I'm not sure exactly what process they've gone through, but obviously any work, any business that's gonna open into a building would need a permit from the city. I would, you know, it really is the applicant's responsibility to have done some homework. And I'm also very happy to help them along, but these are important items, and they need to be dealt with. And in the meantime, it sounds like Jamie, our clerk, is going to be working with AMCO. So I'm supportive of it just the way it is.
Any other discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes?
Vice Mayor Navar,
No.
Councilmember Malloy,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxtat,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
motion passes.
We're on item D7, resolution number 2019-57, application for lease of city-owned land within the airport reserve from SOAR International Ministries Incorporated for the undeveloped portion of Tract A General Aviation Subdivision Number 2, sponsored by administration. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
I move for approval of resolution 2019-57.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to resolution number 2019-57? Seeing none, bring it back to council. Councilmember Malloy.
I'm sorry, I
Oh,
forgot to turn it off.
any,
Did not have a comment.
Councilmember Naxton.
For Mr. Ostrander, we saw this a little over a year ago also, and then the lease was not renewed because of obligations not being completed. And I think the same obligations may be in here. Do we have assurances that that's going to be done in a timely manner and we won't have to wait another year with the property tied up?
Mr. Ostrander.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Naxted. I know it's the applicant's intent to complete those obligations this time. You know, as you know, the original application approved in 2018, it did expire, but the applicant understands the obligations going forward, and we anticipate that they'll be able to complete those during this year.
Any other discussion from Councilmember Naxton? Oh, Councilmember Glendenning.
Just a comment, if the project and aspirations come true, it'll be a positive development for the airport, and I approve this resolution.
Councilmember Naxton.
I was going to request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent has been requested. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, resolution number 2019-57 is adopted. Next, we have resolution number 2019-58, amending its comprehensive rate of schedule of rates, charges, and fees to incorporate changes to application fees for lands outside of the airport reserve, sponsored by administration. And considering the action we took on D1, this would require postponement to that meeting. Councilmember Naxton.
I move to approve resolution 2019-58.
Second?
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2019-58? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to postpone resolution number 2019-58 to the, with directions to the city clerk to bring the resolution back to council on the same agenda where ordinance number 3072-2019 comes back to council.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion
I
on
was
the?
going to request unanimous consent.
Very good, thank you. Unanimous consent was requested for postponement. Is there any objection? Seeing none. Resolution number 2019-58 is postponed. Next, we have resolution number 2019-59, approving an amendment extending the agreement for services to provide on-site facility management for Vintage Point Manor congregate housing, sponsored by administration. Pleasure, council. Vice Mayor Navarro.
Move for the adoption of resolution number 2019-59
Second.
and request unanimous consent.
Very good. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to address resolution number 2019-59? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there an objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2019-59 is adopted. How's everybody doing? Anybody needing a break here? Seeing none, I guess we'll charge along. Next, we're on item G9. Ordinance number 3083-2019, amending the Kenai Municipal Code 14.20.175, adult businesses to increase the buffer distances between adult businesses and sensitive uses from 500 feet to 1,000 feet, and define sensitive uses. This is sponsored by Councilmember Petty. So what we're doing here would have to be a motion to be introduced, and then a motion to refer to planning and zoning. Councilmember Petty.
I'd like to move to introduce ordinance number 3083-2019 and refer to planning and zoning for their August the 28th commission meeting for a recommendation and set a public hearing for September the 4th at our next council meeting, please.
Second.
Does this require a public hearing? I didn't think so. Discussion from council? Councilmember Naxton.
I don't have any concerns about introducing it tonight, but I do with sending it to planning and zoning at this time. So I might need some help on this if I'm supposed to split the issue. And how do I do that
Divide it.
again?
You can divide the question and
Make
let
a
us know
motion to
which
divide.
piece you would like to be taken first and which piece you would like to be taken second. So would you like to take introduction first and refer to the August 28th and public hearing?
I'd like
Second.
to split the question and discuss the sending it to planning and zoning first. 'Cause
How do you want it to be voted on? When it comes to vote, do you want to vote on introduction by itself and referring it to planning and zoning and setting a public hearing for September 4th?
I don't have any concerns with the introduction, so I would move to, for unanimous consent on that, if I could, and then to split the question to just discuss whether we need to send it to planning and zoning at this time.
So what we have is and that's not a motion, is it?
It does not need to be a
Yeah,
motion.
yeah,
So we have
so
a
we-
request to divide the question
Yeah.
with introduction being taken separately from referring and setting a public hearing for September 4th.
Very good, thank you. First up, introduction. So this would divide the question to vote on the motion to introduce at this time. Vice Mayor Navarro.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of introduction, and if I'm a little concerned, it just postpones. I mean, if council is gonna have its own type of work session, I don't know what Councilman Naxted's intent is by introducing it, and it said it's for public hearing. Essentially, we could act on it. Somebody could make a motion at that meeting to send it to planning and zoning, and there would be another vote at that time, which at least I appreciate if that's the intent. I'm a little concerned in how that this came before us and why it's before us, and the process that's doing it, and that's what alerts something, and that we have to drastically change code to limit something, when in fact it's been on our code, and items like that have occurred in some of those locations around the city, so. So I'm opposed to even introducing it this time, but I do appreciate the splitting of the question at least.
Any other discussion on introduction? Councilmember Naxton?
I just want to say, I do support the introduction of it, and so we can have some further discussion as a council. So I'll be in support of introduction.
Any other discussion on introduction? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Petty,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Navarre,
No.
Councilmember Malloy,
Yes.
Councilmember Glendenning,
Yes.
Councilmember Naxton,
Yes?
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
motion passes.
So the second part is this dividing is the postponement. I'm sorry, not the referral. Councilmember Naxton?
Yeah, just some of my thinking is I think I personally need to have more information on, what all of the different things that can be approved and within the existing code are. And in reading the ordinance and the memo from the attorney from March 12th, I'm not sure if that was a typo, maybe, but on the second page is the whereas, it states that the sponsor and the city staff have reviewed studies and articles and made these available to the council and the public. And I haven't received anything regarding that. So I'm not sure if that would be something that would be sent on to planning and zoning, so I don't know what they're going to get. I think it's in his memo also at the last part, that it's been provided to the council, these articles, and I suppose I could look them up. It would have been nice if there was a hyperlink or something. I would have read them. The last line says, I request council review the material prior to making a decision on this ordinance. I think if it's pertinent to the ordinance, I need to see that, and maybe, or we do, and then perhaps we need to have some further discussion. So it's just kind of a process thing. I like to see it come back to the body before and then I know what's going to planning and zoning, and I'm not sure I completely understand our code, to be truthful, because we haven't really delved into this. So that's the reason for my wanting to hold that back.
Mayor Gabriel.
Ms. Hines?
I just want to, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I just wanted to clarify that in the email where I sent you the link to the packet, I did let you know that there was additional information printed out in my office that could be picked up. And I also, within the meeting itself on the website, there is additional link that provides all that information.
Councilmember Glendenning?
Yeah, just, this is the information that you're referencing. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion on referral? So could you restate your motion, Ms. Petty, on referral, the referral part of it, so we're all clear?
Referring it to planning and zoning for their August the 28th commission meeting for a recommendation and set a public hearing for September the 4th.
Okay. Vice Mayor Navarre?
I would ask council to support the not taking it to planning and zoning. The packet Jim handed showed up. Like I said, I haven't had a chance to see it or to go through it. I wasn't even really aware, other than I don't like getting information that I have to go back and look what they put on there, if it's not in my packet or information. Like I said, I'm concerned with how far we're going with this and why the action was taken in the first place and where that really puts us as a city. And so I think it's prudent for us to evaluate this as a council now that it was introduced, than to take it to planning and zoning when you certainly have issues and conflicts and understanding as to what you're sending to them and what it's going to include. I don't think that's fair to the planning and zoning to be the first ones to flush this out when council has its own issues with it. Thank you.
Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Well, I do support sending this to planning and zoning. However, at the next meeting, you know, I guess I hear what Councilmember Next is saying, you know, and I appreciate your Councilmember Glendenning showing the book, which I haven't got yet. It's pretty substantial. You know, the ordinance, you know, as Councilmember Next did point out, said, you know, that we have reviewed the studies and articles, and I do plan to do that. You know, we as Vice Mayor Navarre said, we have had an ordinance on our books for a long time, and I have no problem with looking at enlarging the buffer zone, or the buffer distance, excuse me, just not zone but distance, apparently it's important that we've done our due diligence also, and I think that planning and zoning needs to do theirs. And so maybe the timeline is a little tight. But if it came back to us at the first meeting in September and then we sent it to planning and zoning, you know, there really would be then it could come back to us for the second meeting in September. You know, which would be well in advance of the second meeting in October. So I guess I'm not really sure. I would like to see this move forward. We do have a lot of material to go through, so does planning and zoning. So I guess I could go either way on that. So thank you.
Councilmember Glendenning.
Yes, I think it would be useful to send it to planning and zoning and let them get first bite of the apple, and as always, we get second bite of the apple plus the benefit of their observations. So I say let the process move forward. Thank you.
So I guess, just to clarify, Vice Mayor Navarre, you're sort of alluding to come back to our next council meeting before we refer to the planning and zoning. Is that what your suggestion was? Yeah, Vice Mayor Navarre.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more
Okay.
appropriate, and that's what I'm asking, that's what I asked council. I haven't even read that big packet as to what we're sending, and if we have any, because even when we debate it at least, and we send it and we see it, as it's currently stated, if this motion fails, then it'll be back before us at our next meeting for action. And we could vote it up or down, or we could refer it to planning and zoning. So I want it clear, but I certainly do support me understanding it better and us having a debate, and I think that will help planning and zoning by us having it before us at the next meeting. And then whatever we do with it, we'll all be better informed as to what information is being supplied to the planning and zoning when we haven't even read it and understand it. or let alone understand it, haven't read it.
Councilmember Malloy.
Just a point of order, if we vote down the part of the motion to refer to planning and zoning August 28th, does that preclude us from referring it at our September 5th meeting, to planning and zoning?
Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I don't think so. I think that we need to make an amendment to take out the piece that we're referring it to planning and zoning at their August 28th meeting, so that it leaves that this public hearing is set for September 4th. And then at the September 4th meeting, another motion can be made to refer it to planning and zoning after that.
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So I just want to make sure council's clear that if it's not referred to planning and zoning now, when it comes back to council at the next meeting, it could not legally be approved by council because it's part of the zoning code, which requires a recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. I guess where I'm at with, I'm sort of in agreement with some of the other council members here, is just the amount of material that have, and I haven't had a chance to review the material, to be honest with you. So this was a pretty large packet to begin with, and I spent quite a bit of time trying to digest our land lease sale ordinance more than that. So anyway, I guess where I'm at is I think agree with Vice Mayor Navarre to let it go to our next meeting in September, and then make an action to refer it then to planning and zoning, which would be their first, would that be their first meeting in September? And then back on our agenda.
Yeah, it would be, I believe, their 11th meeting on the 11th. Is that 7 days after the 4th? I would, just to let you know that if you do decide to move out the referral of August 28th, the ad has already been sent to the paper, and it may be that we won't be able to fix that ad and get this off of that ad, which means it would be on the agenda, and they would have to remove it from the agenda. Just so if you see an ad in the paper, that ad has already, it may already be out, so.
Okay, Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, and I appreciate the explanations. I would be prepared to refer to planning and zoning at the next council meeting. I would definitely support that. I want the council to be able to act on it legally. I tend to think that I should do my due diligence before we send it to, part of it anyway, read all the material, and then we can have a discussion about planning and zoning referral, et cetera. I think that it's unfortunate that, there's a time constraint, I understand, for getting publication of an agenda for planning and zoning, but they can simply, amend their agenda at the meeting, if council decides not to refer for that meeting, to delete it, because we haven't actually referred it to them, if that's the decision of the body.
Any further discussion? Councilmember next then.
Yeah, not to repeat myself, but it was my intent that this would, of course, go to planning and zoning. Legally, it needs to, and we just need to look at it first. And I just went back to the email that Ms. Hines was referring to, and in fact, there is a paragraph at the bottom that says there's some supplemental information. It's kind of routine to get these, and so I clicked on the link to download the packet, and that's as far as I went, because that's all I expected. And maybe there's been other things down in the bottom of the emails that I've missed in the past that I'm unaware of, but I don't know how we could fix that, but I didn't see it, and until you said it was there, and I'm not sure it's been made available to the public too, as the ordinance says, and the mayor and the attorney's memo.
Mayor Gabriel, if I may just
Mr. Bloom.
really quickly, it is available to the public on our website, the links. I asked Jamie not to put it in the packet just because I didn't want her to have to print so much material, and it's really just background information for you. So that's why it's not in the packet, and it's being handled a little bit differently, just because I think it's like, I don't know how many pages, but we didn't want to have to print a whole bunch of copies that weren't going to be used for the public as part of the packet. Instead, we just wanted to provide hyperlinks to it.
Well, I guess one of the things that's running through my mind is a question about process here is that we have our meeting on the 5th, they have their meeting on the 11th. There's a lot of materials, that presumably the same materials that we're reviewing, that they'll have to review. How do we get them that material ahead of anything that's on their agenda? So, I mean, that they would look at and postpone or not be able to get through their work at their September 11th meeting.
Mayor Gabriel, the legal department did make enough copies for the Planning and Zoning Commission of the packet, or they can review it online however they chose.
Okay, but
Mayor
Mr.
Gabriel,
Mr. Bloom.
I might, we can have them amend their agenda if that's the way that council wants to go, to just do it as an informational item. I can
Okay.
present the ordinance and pack it to them and tell them that if they want to get a head start, if it's going to come from council, although there's always the chance that council would not refer it, but.
yeah, that's fine. I just wanted to get them kind of, forward thinking here, that if they, that they were prepared or had all the information they need and not be, stumbling through this kind of like we are right now, so. So I guess would we have to request an amendment to the motion to withdraw or have the maker of the motion withdraw the referral?
I just need an amendment to remove the referral to Planning and Zoning for their August 28th meeting, and a second.
Ms. Petty?
I couldn't hear that.
Ms. Heinze, Vice Mayor Navarro could not hear that.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I need a motion to amend that, to remove the referral to the Planning and Zoning Commission at their August 28th meeting.
Ms. Petty?
I would like to amend the motion to remove, to refer this to the Planning and Zoning for their August 28th meeting, please.
Concurrence of the second? Yes. So do we have to, is there anything to vote on now?
Yes, you're setting it for a public hearing on September 4th.
Oh, very good. Okay, thank you. Any other discussion
I
on
believe
that?
the amendment has to pass, though, that she made. You don't, if it passes, then you were saying, is there anything else to
Well,
vote
yeah,
on?
that's what I mean. That's what I was stating, that, because we divided the question, so. Yep. So what we're doing essentially now is voting to have the public hearing on the September 4th.
You're voting to remove the
bit.
referral to Planning and Zoning on August 28th.
There we go. Thank you.
Request unanimous consent?
Very good. Is there any objection to unanimous consent? Seeing none, now we're on the motion as amended, which would be to essentially, would be to set the public hearing for our next meeting and first meeting in September. Any discussion? Vice Mayor Navarro?
Is there anything time-sensitive with this issue? That's a lot of reading material. So, at the September 4th, we're at the end of August here, but did I get that right? September 4th meeting?
September 4th, is it the 4th or the 5th? I can't.
So that's why the clerk just said we're already into, the 20th, and this is a busy week, and then we have it
Yeah,
in 2
September
weeks,
4th.
so it's,
Well, I think that it sort of runs into the same issue as the,
Sure,
as the land.
I'd make a motion to amend it from the 4th to the 18th.
Is there a second? Seeing none, the motion dies for lack of a second, which we do have the ability to postpone again to the 18th, if we so choose. Any other discussion on the motion as amended? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Navarro?
Yes?
Councilmember Malloy?
Yes.
Councilmember Glendening?
Yes.
Councilmember Knoxtet?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Petty?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Next, we have item G10, discussion, public notice of city council meetings requested by the city clerk. Ms. Hines, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. As I mentioned in my memo, administration is continually looking towards strategies that result in efficiencies and cost savings, and have been looking at the cost of publishing our entire agenda in the newspaper. And I've provided results there. In FY19, we spent $7,200. In FY18, we spent about $8,000, and in FY17, we spent just over $6,700. And when looking at the Open Meetings Act, it requires that we give notice of the date, time, and place of the meeting, and that it may be given using print media, but it shall be posted in the office of the public entity. And the practice of other municipalities, the Kenai Peninsula Borough and the City of Homer publish the date, time, place, and the public hearings that are on the agenda in the newspaper. And the municipality of Anchorage publishes only to their website and posts at the principal office. I gave an example of the ads and costs. And other factors that might be taken into consideration would be that there's only one person employed at the newspaper for coordinating ad placement, and we haven't experienced it yet, but if that person were to be on vacation or ill when we needed an ad published, it could impact our ability to publish on the day that we want it, which would mean that it would impact the date that we could have that meeting. In May, the newspaper discontinued publication of the paper that we consistently advertised in. We always advertised in that Monday paper. Our code says that we publish 3 days in advance, and there's a timeline that the date of publication is considered the first day. And so there's that sort of messes with our compliance with our own code right there. On occasion, there have been circumstances where our ad wasn't published in the paper due to software glitches, or it was there was a toner problem or whatever, that it published illegibly. And then there was even an occasion where the paper didn't even make it, no papers made it to the Kenai Peninsula to be delivered, even though it had been printed. And those are factors that make me question whether or not it would impact our ability to hold a meeting. And so I just questioned that if there's legal implications should an agenda not be published for reasons that are beyond our control for holding meetings. And so if there was interest in changing to be consistent with other municipalities, the Kenai Peninsula Borough and the City of Homer, I'd be interested. I would help draft an ordinance to get us to where we're only publishing or any less than the full agenda to be a cost saving, and potentially additional language that may say that the clerk shall cause to be published, so that we've caused it to be published, but maybe not, even though if the newspaper can't deliver for whatever reason, it wouldn't invalidate the meeting. And since I've put that information in the packet, I did a little bit more math on the ads themselves. I gave you the examples for the July 3rd ad. I'm sorry, I gave you the information for the August 7th ad. And I gave you information on the July 3rd ad. So the June 19th ad actually cost $422.68, and it could have cost $248.75 if we only published the public notice, the public hearings. And for tonight's ad, it actually cost $330.34, and it could have cost $218.90 for for publishing just the public hearings, and based on those 4 meetings, the actual costs are $1,500, and projected costs would be about $786. So it could be a savings of about 40% year over year when you look at the what I provided for FY19, FY18, and FY17. And I say 40% because we do still have to notice special meetings and other events that y'all are present at. So while it looks like it could be 50%, I think 40% is a better number to project based on those other little ads that are about $80 or $90. And if anybody's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councilmember Naxted.
I think I'm always up for saving some money, but also I want to make sure that the information gets out, and I'm sure that we would do that. But I was wondering, like on the agenda that you had as an example, it was pretty short meeting last time. On a meeting like tonight, where we had Tim Dillon, would scheduled people be included in all of the ordinances and all of the resolutions that we talked about, and also a work session if we had one scheduled? Would that be all published?
Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. A work session would definitely be published because it's a separate meeting.
I'm sorry, I actually meant executive session.
Executive sessions would not be published. Well, if you were to bring forth an ordinance, I would work with you to whatever it is, to state whatever it is you want it to state. My example was just using public hearings because that is consistent with the City of Homer and the Kenai Peninsula Borough. And so it would just be public hearings. It would not be ordinances under the new business section up for introduction. And it would not be scheduled public comment unless that was worked into the ordinance, if that was the way the sponsor wanted it to be.
So this item we're talking about now would not be published because it's wouldn't be up for public discussion?
Correct.
Vice Mayor Navarro.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to figuring out a way to continue to still do the newspaper and limited or full, but I heard something that concerned me. If the paper quit printing or there was a mistake, we couldn't hold a meeting. You know, in today's day and age where the newspapers are going through some tough times, I would like for you to bring, my thought is have you bring something to us that would do sort of what you had in your second paragraph there, wherever it is, where you post at the library, you post at that, and that's our legal requirement to hold a meeting. And then the council, you could have things that we approve on an annual basis based on budgetary or other and need that we do to further inform the public, but doesn't put a legal restraint on us that stops us from having meeting and taking action. So I think it's probably time in today's changing format to do it through our website and email alerts and start working on that where we can put that out. Even doing Facebook posts and let them know that an ad is a lot cheaper to let people know the new city council agenda is available, and even maybe have a direct link that they punch and they go to. That's where things are going, but I don't want us as a council to get caught in a legal quagmire with some of this newspaper type reporting. So if I'll wait for other comments, but that's the direction I'd like to have the clerk come back to us or the legal to give us a clearer understanding, then we can add to it.
Councilman Glendenning.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Our clerk did make a suggestion as a remedy for that, in the ordinance, we could just simply state cause to be published. In other words, it's referred to the newspaper, and it's out of our hands. If the way it is now, if something goes wrong, our fault, their fault, nobody's fault, and there's no newspaper, then we're in legal trouble, as Vice Mayor Navarre says. But if we just say cause to be published, it's out there, and then follow through with the other prescriptions that Vice Mayor Navarre suggested, I think we would be well served by a change in direction.
Councilor Malloy.
Sure, just a question for legal or the clerk. It's my recollection that our ordinance on publication of the agenda does have maybe in the last paragraph a savings clause, you know, where it says that if the clerk substantially complied with this, then we're okay. Is that correct? Because I think that kind of addresses the issue of what if the newspaper isn't delivered.
That would probably be Mr. Bloom's question.
We would be okay with our city code, and I think I would argue under state law that if they're not publishing, then they're not at least for that week, they're not a newspaper of general circulation,
But doesn't our code actually already say something about if there's substantial compliance, then the meeting's not invalid? So I'm asking you to look at.
Let's take a 5-minute Eddie's. Good break time. back on the record here. Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I don't know, do you want to take it or you want me to?
Oh,
I'll let our clerk.
defer to Ms. Hines. Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Malloy is correct. I was not aware that Section K says failure to comply with the above policies and procedures or with any administrative policies will not invalidate any ordinance or council action as long as there was a good faith effort at compliance by the city clerk.
Councilmember Malloy.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So to me, that means that if you hit the button and you send the agenda over to the newspaper and for whatever reason it doesn't get published, we can still have our meeting, you know, under our code. That being said, I would not like to see the publication be so limited that it's only public hearings. You know, if we're going to change it to squeeze up the ad to save some money, you know, I think that new business items, you know, that are ordinances like the one we were introducing tonight, that are going to be up on the next agenda, and action approval items that we're going to be taking action on also should be items that are published, you know, because that informs the public about what's going to be happening at the next meeting, and we have tight timelines for things. Also, there are still people that don't have computers and everything, and they go to some of them go to the library, but not everyone does have a system. And there actually are, although maybe they're a minority now, but there are people that don't participate in Facebook, you know, because they don't like the algorithms and everything like that gets all their data. So if we're going to look at efficiency in terms of the publication, I think, you know, we also want to try to have people involved, you know, with our meetings and everything. So I would I would not support it being limited only to public hearings. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Navarro.
Sure, and I'm not trying to limit public participation. I'm trying to increase. You know, in the old days where the newspaper was really the only way to communicate, and for us to have our code say we have to send it to the newspaper, but we don't have to send it to anybody else. There's, as you stated, there's people that still only read the newspapers, but there's a lot more that are out there on social media than those the other way, and our code doesn't guarantee that they get noticed. But we're still doing it the old way. And I'm saying, and I'm not going to be held hostage by an increased cost when it's even less effective, because you're doing more online than printing. And it's all I'm asking is for our council to look at that and to not have our code say we still have to push the button to say to the newspaper when in fact we're reaching less and less that way and missing more and more by not. So I totally believe in giving public notice, but I also realize we have a fiduciary responsibility, and those two things are starting to conflict, and I'm willing to have a work session or debate on that, but I am not willing to stay the old way and just keep saying the clerk has to put the button and pay whatever the fee is to alert the newspaper. Thank you.
Well, before we actually debate this issue, deliberate, I think the purposes would be that the city clerk is requesting that if any council member is so inclined to, she had worked with them on an ordinance, then at that time we could schedule a public hearing, have the debate and the discussion. So certainly, thank you for bringing this forward, and appreciate you know, your efforts to save the city money. And you know, we can, if someone so chooses to work with the clerk to generate an ordinance, that at that point we can flesh it out. So, Councilman Glendenning?
Yes, this doesn't really pertain to the ordinance, but it's in the flow of ideas here regarding how we get information to the public, how we at least alert them to coming actions. And think I'm correct in saying that over at the borough, and I think the city of Soldotna, on the public hearings, those that are just the first pass, instead of putting them on the consent agenda, there's actually a reading of them into the record, so that those who follow us on the radio and those in the audience at least are alerted to maybe a subject or a topic that comes up. Because when people come here, there's only one copy available in the back, and when we say asterisk, it means nothing to the people here. Sometimes we have a full chamber, sometimes not. But I think it would add just a few moments to our meeting and would perhaps be a more fulsome revelation of the business of the city, at least topically, and people would be alerted and thus better prepared. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Naxton?
I'd be happy to work with you on that.
We have Councilmember Malloy.
Sure, and if you don't mind, I join you doing that.
Absolutely.
Okay, we have
Thank
several co-sponsors.
And I'll
Councilmember
second the
Glendon.
motion when it comes up.
So it sounds like you have a couple council members that'll be willing to work with you, Miss Hines. Is there anybody have any other discussion on that item? Okay, so it sounds like it'll be before us and we can really delve into it at that time. Next up, Commission Committee Reports, Council on Aging.
August was not available. I believe the 12th of September is the next meeting, and we will have a report subsequent to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Glendinning. Airport Commission.
Yes, thank you. We met the Airport Commission on August the 8th. There was an update on the terminal rehab project. There was an update on the seal cracking that was in process. There was discussion and approval of ordinance that we spoke about today, 3072-2019. Also, the airport is preparing for their mass casualty drill that will be happening in October. And then our next meeting will be September the 12th. And that ends my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Petty. Harbor Commission, I think Mr. Glendinning filled in for Mr. Peterkin.
You bet. Yeah, I was asked to fill in for Councilor Peterkin. On the 19th, in these chambers, the Harbor Commission had a meeting, and we actually had a very, very engaged and full discussion of all the agenda items. And our city manager and his assistant came and gave us a very thorough rendition of the land sale and leasing policies and procedures. And there were some questions from the commission, and I think some of them maybe reflect common questions that other commissions and committees have had, or what you've heard from other people. But I thought at least they had thought through a lot of the implications of the action. There was a discussion recommendation for assignment of shore fishing leases and tideland leasing, and the city attorney suggested we wait until we have finished our rework of the pertinent harbor section of the code, and then we can proceed with these deliberations. Our attorney suggested that at the next harbor meeting there actually be incorporated a work session to deal with a lot of the code changes that we had an active committee on for almost a year, and he gave a very thorough predicate to what we're to look at, gave us things to think about, and I think we'll have a good work product at the end. There was a item on the agenda talking about the potential for dredging at the city dock, and our Public Works Director revealed that that perhaps it really is a function of the Corps of Engineers to assist us with that. There are other harbors that have been dredged out just recently. I believe there's one down the chain. Was it? I think maybe Homer had some. The Nilchik, those three, and there's certainly no reason why we can't get our oar in the water. Also, we're in the top 30 as far as value of fish product landed, and it's time that we look not only at our dock, but the totality of our harbor. It was mentioned that perhaps some sandbars are now appearing at low tide that hadn't been there before, and it could cause some congestion with docking or available of docking for our fishing fleet. Also, was revealed that there was a processor from Whittier that was interested in our dock, and of course it is a public dock, so we would have to not only accommodate a new user, but also public uses. But the information that I received, that may have been included in the meeting or not, is that they're interested in having that dock available at all tides, just not 2.5 hours during a tide. And I think that would be that would be in our view to do it, especially if we follow through with the ability to engage the Corps of Engineers and other avenues of funding and engineering. There is a outfit locally that does it, and I think there's maybe one or two that we haven't talked to. So with the dock repairs that we have, and the idea that dock of the city dock is going to be open for business, it's not a matter of build it, they will come, say repair it, and they'll return. I think there's a wonderful opportunity for us to provide a public service. The state granted the city of Kenai the riparian lands under the river and certain waters out onto the ocean, and even though we're only 7,100 people in our community, we do have a responsibility to the population as a whole, because we don't rely on 7,100 people to use the dock. There are people from all around the area that use it and would use it. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox on that. The DipNet report is not quite complete, and so is to find all the information that the Harbor Commission might want to know. So they eagerly look forward to having that done. There was quite a discussion on the PU fishery. It was noted that there was how can I say, more happy campers this year than in the past, and that enforcement was up and uniformly enforced. Most of it was just people not taking care of their fish tickets and not handling their fish properly before it was concealed, which is a word of art. And I think the Coast Guard being here, I think, helped. Of course, it still gets pretty nautical out there when the fish are running and the tides are going and there's a lot of people, but that's something that we have to continue to be mindful of. We have our own resources, plus able to collaborate with state and Coast Guard. I have some more, but do you have a question?
Councilmember Malloy?
Oh, no, I just had a comment to add to
Sure,
your report.
go ahead.
But I don't need to do it till you're done.
Okay, all right.
Okay, I mean, if you would like.
I'm almost done, yeah. What was suggested was that there be a resolution created for our Harbor Commission supporting the dredging of the harbor. I understand through some of my AML meetings, whatnot, that if something comes from how can we say, a commission or committee that's more oriented for citizen involvement rather than elected politicians, it seems to carry quite a bit of weight with those entities that we're petitioning for say, the Corps of Engineers for help. And also they asked for maybe guidance in creating a resolution from the from the Harbor Commission asking for financial support for the PU fishery. I know state funding, financing is a hot button issue, but I think it's important because of the unfunded mandate that's handed to us and the unpredictability of the fishing. The state has actually put us in the fishing business, that we ask for some support, some remedy for the potential financial burden that comes to us. Our goal is to break even, and sometimes, especially the past couple of years, we have not done that. I understand that there's an estimate coming soon for the engineer for the dock repair, and we're looking forward to that. Again, that was earthquake damaged, and I'm sure we'll be able to have our dock back at full capacity. And then just one comment: the Harbor Commission asked that maybe next year, when we have the PU fishery, if they could be included with the VIP badges just to walk around. They have been in the past, and I find it's useful when I do attend commission and committee meetings, that the information that I receive helps me, and quite frankly, I don't have to work as hard if I get information at one sitting, and additional to the comments I receive as I go about the city. But anyway, it's our city manager's prerogative, and I'll ask that he just consider it. And that's it. It was a real good meeting, and I'm pleased with the commission and the support from the city manager's office and the staff, and we have a good working group now. Thank you for your forbearance.
Councilmember Malloy.
Yeah, just wanted to add a comment that, relating to your comments on the city dock, David Chiswick, who went to the Harbor Commission and has been in council a couple of times about, our city dock and the whole thing with the crane and then the special use permit. Just wanted to let everyone know that I had some contact with him, and he said it worked out fabulously. That it worked really great with him. He really appreciated it. He said there was 2 other people that had special use permits, and a program will probably grow. And he's still looking for maybe some kind of market there when fish come in or whatever. But he's not willing to do the work for that. But I just wanted to pass that on. That worked out really well.
Councilmember Nexton.
Yeah, did have a question on this, the dredging idea. I see like Anchorage dredging all the way out past Fire Island. What is the scope of the dredging? Are we talking about are they talking about around the docks? Or are they talking all the way out the mouth of the river a mile? You get past those sandbars out there. I mean, what's the scope?
Councilmember Glendening.
Yeah, I'm not prepared to declare the scope. It began with having the dock available at high and low tide, but it was also mentioned by some of the users, all fishermen and from cannery people, that this river is starting to fill in, and we would need a little broader scope for dredging and clearing, and that would be a item of discussion for Harbor Commission and certainly us. And your point's well taken. We're not going to go out, to say to the Dillon platform and dredge, but that sandbar is building up out there, and a lot of it's product from the river. But I think it would be fair to say we can have best practices revealed to us from the Corps of Engineers, and proceed accordingly. And I think that'd be the way to go. A lot of it also depends on the success of our bluff erosion project, because if you understand that as the river gets wider, it gets shallower. There's only so much water, and as I recall from the Corps of Engineers too, is that a lot of the buildup on the landmass opposite the bluff is actually material that has just gone across the river and built up there. So there's quite a movement of silt and sand in the river, and it would take perhaps the Corps of Engineers to help us understand fully what Commissioner or Councilor Nackstead is asking how far do we want to go and all of this. But it's definitely needed. If we don't do it, we'll eventually lose access to that waterfront. Thank you.
I guess maybe we could have a request of Mr. Oster and our administration to reach out to the Corps to see, who does analysis of, something along that line. I'm not sure, because I've noticed, I've been going on that river for many, many, many years, and there is substantial changes that have taken place regarding the sandbars and, how far they extend out and the direction they're going. So maybe if we could just have an inquiry, I think maybe it is, time to have at least an analysis of, when we should have it surveyed, or if we should have it surveyed, or things along that line, because
Yeah.
the tidal, there'll always be, variables because of the tidal influx that we have in Cook Inlet here and at the mouth, but certainly we don't want to have where we're pigeonhole or restricting our fleet from getting into the river at or having them wait for a higher and higher tide over time. So, Vice Mayor Navarre, Vice Mayor Navarre?
Yeah, since I would agree, and I've made the mention to look at the feasibility of when you're dredging it, if it can be in conjunction with our bluff erosion project and fill in behind the rocks, or whether that isn't a feasible option. That might be some place to put a lot of that material and at the same time help our bluff project after it's built. Because I believe, but I don't have any scientific evidence of it, that if we dredge around the dock, it's sort of like a lot of wasted money, because you still have the bluff erosion and you still have that, since we're so close on the bluff. But if it's not feasible, then we have to look at it as a second project, but it might be something that can be in conjunction. So I hope he can look at the feasibility of that also.
We do, as Councilmember Naxted mentioned, at my day job with DOT, we do work with the Corps on a permit at the Ninilchik Harbor, and have used some of the dredge spoils for revetment stabilization down there. So, Councilmember Naxted or Glendenning?
Yeah, I think we have a consensus, at least, to seriously look at this issue, and we all have our viewpoints on what can and should and must be done. But the important thing is to keep our river course open for our fleet, and actually for safe operation of the PU fishery, and on and on. There's many reasons, and I know our city administration will take a serious look at this and bring us a positive path forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Parks and Rec will be meeting with the Beautification Committee on the 27th at 6 o'clock, and they're going to be looking at flower beds and parks and things like that. I think we got a memo today from the clerk on that, and have no meeting to report. Their next meeting is September 5th.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Planning and Zoning Commission met last Wednesday, August 14th. They had several items on their agenda. They considered a plat and passed resolution PZ 201931. This was basically to allow Wallace and Leona Jackson to vacate property lines between their two lots on Evergreen Street, so that they could create one larger lot in order to meet code requirements to build a detached garage and not be in violation of setbacks and stuff like that, and that passed. There was also a public hearing on resolution PZ 201927, which was an application for a conditional use permit to operate a retail marijuana store. And so this would be, it was by Red Run. It was to be in the same building where the Moose Lodge was, where they have also have a manufacturing conditional use permit. So it was for a second conditional use permit. There was opposition to it. The Planning and Zoning passed it, but the time for appeal hasn't run. There was also a resolution, PZ 201929, which is recommending to council that the council amend our code on standards for commercial marijuana to incorporate hours of operation for retail marijuana establishments in the city of Kenai. There was some public comment opposing that. They did pass the resolution. So I would ask that the city clerk put it on the agenda as a discussion action item for our next meeting so that we can take a look at it and decide if what their recommendation is. Their resolution includes a proposed ordinance that would make an amendment to say that no retail marijuana store may conduct business on or allow any customer or consumer to access the licensed premises between the hours of 2 a.m. and 8 a.m. each day. And that was their, and that a copy of this be forwarded to Kenai City Council. And because, you know, the squeezing of packet deadlines for everything that wasn't, you know, in front of us for tonight. So I ask that it be a discussion action item for the next meeting so we can take a look at that. They also passed resolution PZ 201932, which recommended enactment of ordinance 3072-2019, which is the one on the city owned lands that we had on our agenda tonight. And then they also recommended approval of the application for lease by SOAR International Ministries that we took action on tonight. And their next meeting is August 28th. Thank you.
Thank you. Beautification Committee?
Our next meeting is September 10th, and Councilman Nexted stole all my other information.
Well, you could mention
I'm
that.
only kidding, but yes, the beautification committee is, and the clerk put beautification first before Parks and Rec in the work session memo. So it'll be a great opportunity, as Councilman Nexted said, to. It's kind of a yearly thing that they do, and I've done it before, and it's very informational.
And I did notice the Field of Flowers seems to be coming in here, popping a little bit, which is good to see considering how dry it's been this year. So kudos to Parks and Rec for that. Mini Grant Steering Committee, there is no report. Under Vice Mayor Navarre, you're excused. Report of the mayor. I did attend the AML conference last week, starting with the Conference of Mayors on Tuesday, and it was a good conference. It was interesting to see. When you go to those, you get a perspective, especially the Conference of Mayors. You get perspectives of issues that affect other communities, which opened my eyes, especially to rural Alaska and even like, I think there's rural and then there's bush Alaska, which is there's a definite difference between the two. I mean, it can't all kind of be lumped together. And, you know, some of the issues that the bush Alaska faces regarding, you know, some of their infrastructure and the needs that they have is always a kind of an eye opener to me. But on the other hand, one of the things they did at introduction was ask all the mayors to, you know, mention something positive that were going on in their community. So when you look at the overall picture of Alaska and our financial situation, how unsettled things are at this point, it was encouraging to hear that every mayor had, you know, some positive things to say about their community, but in you know, pretty big items. You know, no one's sitting on their hands, you know, waiting for the state to figure this out. You know, of course, that's always in the background, but it seems to be a lot of the communities are moving forward to better their communities. So that was a positive note there. And wanted to mention, as I told Vice Mayor Navarre, that we got Industry Appreciation Day coming up on this Saturday on the Park Strip, which is August 24th, 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. So And I will say, mention that, something that Vice Mayor Navarro says every day is that that doesn't cost anybody anything to show up here. Everything's free. So, hopefully the weather will hold and we'll have a good showing. So with that, that's my report. And we'll move to the city manager, Mr. Oshner.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I also went to the AML conference, but just prior to it, we had the Alaska Municipal Managers Association Conference, which is when all the municipal managers from around the state get together. It's a great opportunity for all of us to share and learn from each other and figure out, some of the issues that are going on in the other municipalities around the state. Our own Stormy Brown actually gave a presentation to all the municipal managers that was very well received on performance evaluations for department heads. She's kind of the in my opinion, the state expert on how performance evaluations should work. Several of them contacted me later and wanted to follow up, so that was good. And Soldotna did a great job holding both the AMMA conference and the AML conference. On the 15th of August, I got an online sales tax update. Terry, Scott, and I met with the borough, and progress is being made on the online sales tax. The borough is actually going to be bringing forward code changes that will position us more favorably to collect online sales tax. The larger picture, the final solution, still has multiple remaining hurdles to overcome, primarily cooperation between the different municipalities, and then figuring out what that single point of contact, or the single tax collection agency is, who that is going to be. Those are the two biggest hurdles in front of us, but they're continuing to work on it. I want to let council know that I met with Brandon Borneman of the Kenai Watershed Forum on the 16th. He's very interested in maintaining the relationship with the city, and he was specifically wanted to know if council had any concerns about the organization. I know we've had some discussions about the bacterial testing in the mouth of the Kenai. He did say that it's likely that bacterial testing will be ending here shortly. They've got enough information that they know what's going on at this point. I told him that the council, from my perspective, was still very supportive of the organization, Kenai Watershed Forum. He said that he was willing to come and talk to the council more, and certainly is very interested in maintaining his relationship with the city. Last night, I presented the final report to the Borough Assembly in my role as chair of the Election Stakeholders Group. There is a joint resolution that the Stakeholders Group is looking for support from all the municipalities of the borough, supporting the recommendations. You'll likely be seeing that here at some point over the next month or so. The city is going to be conducting an online auction in the next several weeks. We've got 22 fairly large ticket items that are scheduled to go into the online auction. We've had a tendency in the past to accumulate these large ticket items instead of replacing. Typically, when we have an appropriation to purchase a piece of equipment, it's to replace an existing piece, but what we've been doing is continuing to accumulate, and we need to get rid of those pieces of equipment that are a significant drain on the city, the maintenance of those, particularly when they're rarely used. Good news in the sales tax front, we just got our second quarter numbers, April to June. So the second quarter was up 4.3%. It should increase as late filings come in, so that's likely going to increase a little bit more. The first half of 2019, so from January to June 30th, we are finally seeing revenues that are greater than what our peak was as a city back in 2015. So we saw that dip in 16, 17, 18, 19. We're now beating 15 numbers. So that's great news. Tells me people are coming to town and they're spending their money, so that's really good news. I did want to talk about VIP passes, as Mr. Councilmember Glendening brought up during his report. They were available to all commission members. I gave several of them out. I'll do a better job next year making sure that they recognize that they are available, and they just have to come into my office, or we can get them to them either way. But I certainly don't, I want all commission members to have access to that fishery if they want it. Airport terminal. There is more information in your mid-month report from Mr. Curtin about that, but we're still plugging away. Same completion date, February of 2020. Raven should be moving into the new space by early September, which I know they're ready for. And last, of course, as always, bluff erosion. I sent an email out to council. There were 2 letters that I submitted to the Corps, one for an MOU allowing us to start early work prior to the design, and the second one actually pursuing a design agreement. Both of those are being processed by the Corps. Actually, Mayor Gabriel and I did meet with Garrett Boyle of Murkowski's office at Summer AML, and Murkowski's office is pursuing funding for the project in this year's energy appropriations bill. He's working on it. I'm not sure what the chances of success there are, but Murkowski's office is certainly looking out for us and seeing if there's a way that they can come up with that funding. So that's the end of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Ocean. Any questions of the city manager? Councilmember Glenn Dunning.
I just have a few. Yeah, just a general question. In our report here, it's kind of intimated that the highway expansion from Eagle Rock to Sportsman Lake past mile 4 anyway, was still for 2019. I think that timeline has slipped a little bit, hasn't it? Is it a matter of funding or just availability of contractors or what?
Is that to me, or council?
To anybody who will answer. It was in the Public Works Director's report.
Oh, for
Yeah, just that it was going to be for 2019.
Mr. Curtin, do you want to make a run at that?
So, thank you, Mr. Mayor, very much for the question. That has remained relatively unchanged. I do coordinate with the DOT staff that's currently doing the spur and as well as the Beaver Loop project. I don't believe that changed from last month, if I'm correct. But yeah, what's on the report was the last information that I had provided from Marcus and the other staff that I had with the DOT at the time.
Yeah, I just, just the layman's observation from Eagle Rock on towards Soldotna, it doesn't look like any real prep work has begun.
Yeah, no, not to speak out of turn, but I did talk to Mr. Faulkner here this past week, and he on a separate issue, but he did mention possibly, looks like this phase 1's going to bleed into next year for the final, because I called about putting in a turnaround at the end of that for our trucks, so that when we do those wide section, that we have a place to turn around, so because it takes multiple passes. And he indicated that the schedule they're on, they might not get to that full width. They still might just be 2 lane, even if they're paved out. That would just be base or the first mat, so they wouldn't be running full width on there. So phase 2, but at the same time, he did mention phase 2, which is towards Soldotna, would be, they're looking at maybe getting a clearing grubbing contract out ahead of, or at least a clearing contract out ahead to get that kind of prep for the utility relocates.
Okay, most excellent, because I do get asked about it occasionally. Spruce bark beetle rearing its ugly head. Say over by our cemetery, there's 2 nice long-standing trees that are by the fence that are probably the first victims. Probably we should just have it in just a comment. We probably should have it in our view for next year's budget cycle for tree removal, danger tree, hazardous tree, et cetera, within our city. Just a suggestion or an observation. The beetles are back.
Yeah, and on that note, not to interrupt
No,
you,
go ahead.
but I did talk to someone who mentioned that there seems to be, I haven't really gone down and investigated, but behind the that drainage there, like behind the baseball fields,
Yeah.
across from the Catholic Church, that behind the baseball fields, that there was a noticeable amount of beetle kill in there too. So I don't know if the borough used to have a hazard tree mitigation for beetle kill. So I don't know if that's still in effect or not. Mr. O'Shannor?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The city actually has removed a number of spruce bark beetle trees already. Based on conversations that I've had with folks at the borough, the expectation is that the majority, if not all, of the mature spruce trees on the Kenai Peninsula will be dead within the next 3 years. I'm hopeful that there will be some ability to coordinate with the borough and potentially with the federal government to help in this regard. I know Senator Murkowski, when she spoke at the AML conference, did mention the spruce bark beetle epidemic and the fact that she's interested in, once again, in helping out in some manner. So I think that we're going to be seeing mass devastation over the entire peninsula. If you look a mile north of the city of Kenai all the way to Point Possession, virtually every spruce tree out there is already dead. So I expect that it's coming this way, and we'll see most of the trees within town dead within the next 3 years. So it's on our radar, and it's something that I think we're going to have to coordinate and collaborate with the borough.
Okay, thank you. There was a small fire over by Woodland, over in the woods. I noticed a helicopter bringing water to it. Is anything can be brought out, or is it just something that happened and we took care of it?
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Glendening. I sent a report from the fire department about that fire by email several weeks ago.
It said it was going to be investigated. It didn't say anything about cause, eh?
No, okay, and we still do not know what the cause was. It's still under investigation, and to this point, we don't know what made the cause there. We have looked at the possibility that there were homeless camps in the area. There's no indication that that is the cause, but as far as of what the cause is, we don't know with certainty at this point.
Okay, thank you. Then just want to give thanks to the Parks and Rec staff. I was going down Readout, and they're doing a very good job of trimming any conflicts runners may have with trees along the sidewalk there, and it looked very good. And the young fellow was running the equipment. The chainsaw seemed to be on task and focused and very efficient in his movements, and that was welcome to see. I see here we have some crack seal money in our report. Was that just for material, and we're going to do that in-house? Do we have that ability, or is that still something we're developing to handle ourselves?
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendening. I actually like Mr. Curtin to speak to it because he has been working on this for several months, and I think we're on the verge of actually kicking that off. So if he could speak to it briefly, I'd appreciate it.
Mr. Curtin?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yes, we actually, we are in possession of materials for our streets department staff in coordination with Randy, our shop foreman. We have the crack sealer that the city has owned for a number of years. I don't believe it's been used in probably 7 or 8 years. But we did fire it up. It is operational. We have material, and we are actually set, pending the weather, to start putting crack seal down Monday, Tuesday next week. So you'll likely see some of that equipment out in town Monday through Thursday next week, pending it's not raining, and we're going to see how it goes. So, but I do have 4 pallets of material in hand, and we are going to do what we can with in-house staff and see how far that goes and how that process works. If it works well, you'll likely see more of that. If it doesn't, then I'll have to go to Plan B. But we wanted to put our foot in the water and see how we could do with what we already have and test the waters and see how it works. So you will see that taking place next week.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin. Any other questions? The same, Councilman Glendening?
Just one more ask. It was mentioned about the perhaps changing the voting procedures, and you'd given a presentation to the borough. At some point in time, we'll get the benefit of it also, correct? Before we look at the resolution supporting it.
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, Councilmember Glendening. I can provide as much or as little information as the council would like. I could bore you to death with the minutia, or I could provide a similar presentation as I did to the assembly, or when the resolution comes up for discussion, I can provide a summary at that time, whatever the council would prefer.
Councilman Glendening?
Yeah, I usually am in favor of full reveal, but perhaps just a little more than an executive summary, just so we have a basis of understanding before we vote on a resolution, and it would be more fulsome than just a memo, one-page memo. And I've attended some meetings, and I know others have here too, but I don't have a real good overarching view of what it's about. And I'd appreciate any how can we say, voting 101 information you could give us. That would be most welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, and there was a report that was generated, an ESG recommendation. Maybe we could get that disseminated.
Mayor
yeah.
Gabriel?
Ms. Sines?
I was just gonna let you know that I have Hal Smalley's report from last night's meeting, and as soon as the borough publishes their action agenda, which he always wants to go with that, I do have that report and had intended on sending that out at the same time, the final report of the election.
Yeah,
stakeholder group,
that'll give you
just as
something
soon as
to chew on, Mr. Glendenning. I guess I was just turning to the chair of the, to the group there, Thank you for that, appreciate it. Any other questions of the city manager? Councilmember Naxton?
Two brief questions. One is, what's the status of the search for a new library director? Number two, the status on the flooring for Vintage Point.
Mr. Ostrander?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Naxted. Interviews for the new library director. We have 4 interviews scheduled for next week. And the flooring for the senior center, the last update I got from Kathy Romaine was that she was still waiting to hear from Rasmussen. I have not gotten an update from her probably in the last week to 10 days, but as far as I know, she's still waiting for a notice from Rasmussen.
Any other questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll move to the city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. I don't have anything to report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, we'll go to the city clerk, Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. The candidate filing period closed on August 15th, and we have 1 candidate for Mayor Gabriel, and we have 2 candidates for council members Petty and Glendenning, and so our ballot is set with candidates and 2 propositions. The absentee voting begins on September 16th here in the office. We're doing prep work now, getting ballots printed and ballot pamphlets mailed out, and we expect the deputy clerk to be back in the office half-time beginning on September 23rd, and then full-time on December 1st. And the reason for the half-time is that it just gives her the full benefit of the 18 weeks that are allowed by our code and the state of Alaska for FMLA. It's a benefit to both that she comes back in some capacity a little bit earlier than the full 18 weeks, but still gives her meaningful opportunity to bond with her baby for a full 18 weeks as provided by the law. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councilmember Malloy.
Yeah, just a question about the ballot itself. I mean, between Councilmember Glendenning and Councilmember Petty, who got first position on the ballot?
Thank you. Stormy Brown drew the names, and she drew Councilmember Petty's name is first. And
all right, congratulations. It's worth a few votes.
For the record, I asked her to choose well.
Well, as I was told, we're first and last on the agenda, so whatever. Any other questions of the city clerk? Thank you, Ms. Hines. Next, we'll move to additional public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll go to council comments. We'll start with Ms. Petty.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank the city for giving me the opportunity to attend AML. That was very beneficial. And it was very enriching to hear our Senator, Ms. Lisa Murkowski, give her presentation. Also, the mayors all donated opportunities for silent auction, and over $2,000 was raised for the charity of choice, and that was the Boys and Girls Club. And I'd also like to thank Vice Mayor Navarre for he and his brother matching that. So there was over $4,000 that went to our local Boys and Girls Club. I just wanted to personally thank them for doing that. So it's an honor to be able to be up for re-election again, and it's an honor to serve with y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Petty. Councilman Glendenning.
Yes, I too went to the AML conference, and I found it very, very useful, especially the part where they had the legislation that was out there, and they gave a little recap of what was involved with it. I thought it informed me very well. I understood quite a bit more about the process than when I was done. I'll be attending the industry appreciation days and assisting with some administrative tasks. And I encourage everybody to come out. It's quite a fun time, and I really do look forward to it. The election, it'll be relatively uneventful, but it'll be also important to encourage everybody to exercise their civic duties and come out and vote. There are items for consideration on the ballot besides candidates, and it's important that we do turn out. Also, the AGDC committee that I'm on, we will be having a meeting at the end of this month, and we may decide to suspend our activities or maybe have some final comments. But as I said in the last meeting, what remains is finishing up with the environmental impact statement and making sure we have accurate comments reflecting our municipalities and how we interact with other, how can we say, census areas and other municipalities. And the main goal now, the main driver is to get this plant permitted. The EIS is good for 5 years with options to renew, maybe with modifications. And so I offered with Elizabeth and myself and Planner Zarneski, who is an alternate on the committee, that maybe we could just formally or informally get together with the city managers and make sure that's what revealed in the EIS is accurate and is a fulsome rendition of our concerns. I think it won't be very burdensome to do that. It's a very thick packet, but as it pertains to us, it's just 200-300 pages, and it's very easy to read. And again, I want to thank our city manager and the staff for a successful PU fishery and the engagement that the city administration and staff has had with commissions and committees. I can see the positive result and the encouragement that these citizens have received, and I know we'll get as we progress in our growth and learning about what these committees do, and myself and the members will have more valid and viable information and observations to pass on, and that'll make all of our work a little bit easier. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Malloy.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Well, I want to thank you, Mayor Gabriel and Councilmember Glendenning and Petty for being candidates for re-election. I just want to say that I think that the fact that you have no competition for the seats that you hold means that maybe, how should I put this, that the public is not unduly dissatisfied with the work of the mayor and the council as a whole, as well as the administration, and the department heads and the people that do the work and all the services that the city provides. I think it's if the public was significantly or more dissatisfied with what we were doing, then there might be more people that were wanting to do the work that's required to do the job that you all do. It does require a lot of work, and you know, we don't always agree on everything, but I think the way that we function, you know, again, I would say, you know, that the public's not unduly satisfied with the council as a whole. So congratulations on being candidates, and thanks for doing it again.
Thank you, Councilman Malloy. Well phrased, I guess. It's always a tenuous hold there we have, but yeah, thank you very much for that. Councilman next then.
Yeah, I want to wish the three candidates here at the dais good luck. I'm sure that you'll do well. And, just, I mean, my opinion is, and I was thinking about this earlier, is I do think the public is pleased with the council as a whole, and the way we do function, and I think we function well and appropriately, and we all have the city's best interest at heart, and you know, I think that, like along with what Mr. Molloy said, that's a good indicator of, you know, lack of competition is not a matter of not caring or something. I think that there's a lot of people out there that could and would run, but I think that they're satisfied. I did attend AML last week for most of a day and a half. Found it very educational as always. One of the items, in addition to what was mentioned here, that they were talking about was the permanent fund dividend, which, you know, one way or the other, but that in some thinking anyway, that the legislature and those were looking more at more of a 50-50 split on it, and then they took it one step further where maybe it was a 40-40 split between the state of Alaska and the public, and 20% would go to municipalities, villages, and whatnot in a proportional sort of way. Of course, that would be tax-free money. It wouldn't be taxed by the federal government. It would go into a community and fund their schools, roads, harbors. There was a long list of things. It was just a general discussion, not necessarily a direction that things were going to go, but that did provide an avenue for municipalities to recoup funds that in fact, you know, everybody uses, you know, and those things. I will be attending Industry Appreciation Day this weekend, and participating in that and helping set up and take down and anything else I can do in between. And the last thing I'd like to mention is I probably spend too much time on Facebook, I suppose. I pop in there. The Kenai Fire Department has done an excellent job, not only during the time with this wildfire with the snow, not the Snow River, but the Swan Lake, but they provide updates and then links, and they seem, whoever's managing that is doing an excellent job. I've heard people in the public saying, you know, is the road open or not, but they like to go to the page for the Kenai Fire Department because it's most up to date and useful. And I mean, I kid you not, that happened several times, and that's been my experience. And of course, they get links from the borough and state and from others, and right now, and then they forward that on. So if you go to that, you get pretty much the up-to-date stuff. And so doing a very good job, and it's been very effective. So if you could pass that on, I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you. We have no executive session scheduled, and we have no pending items before us. Seeing no other business before this body, we are adjourned.